It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
And here we are again, another big edition of Rico Brogna, episode number 625. The Mets have made a long-awaited, massive trade. They have acquired their ace, at least for 1 year, Freddy Peralta from the Milwaukee Brewers. Tobias Myers also comes. He is much more than a throw-in. We'll get to him later. In exchange for Jett Williams and Brandon Sproat. I promise you that even though I am recording this Rico Brogna live on YouTube and wherever you download your podcasts, minutes after I returned home from a basketball game that was not really a basketball game, it was a massacre. It was a game that was a scrimmage between real men and then a G League team. I promise you that my opinion over a basketball game that very few people actually cared about is not going to cloud my opinion on this trade. I'm going to tell you that as I was watching the game and I was getting text messages saying, hey, the Mets are close to making a big trade. I didn't hear the team. I didn't hear the players, but the Mets are close to making a big trade. My stomach started to get nervous, and I assumed that the big trade was with Milwaukee. Because even though the Mets and the Padres had all those talks early in the offseason, it feels like there has been momentum towards a massive trade for Freddy Peralta. And I got nervous because I knew what the ask was. You know, we had heard over the last few days what the Brewers were looking for. And so I got very, very nervous. I didn't get excited. I'm not going to lie to you. And I had to bribe my 5-year-old to leave this Nets-Knicks game early because not only did I want to do a Rico with all of you, but we were down by 50. So get me the hell out of Madison Square Garden. And as I was driving home, you know, you get those voice text messages. I click it, and I hear the Mets have acquired Freddy Peralta. And instead of being excited, I was really nervous about what they gave up. And I'm not going to lie to you, my gut reaction, my first reaction to this trade is not the excitement I thought I'd have that the Mets were the best available pitcher on the market, assuming Tarek Skubal isn't available, and I don't think he is. My reaction was, my God, they gave up a lot. And I don't know if that is how most of you guys feel. There may be just a lot of, who cares? They're prospects. Stop being a prospect hugger. Who gives a crap? We got Freddy Peralta. We got a guy who's made 30 starts 3+ years in a row. We got a guy that led the league in wins, if you care about that dopey stat. We got a guy who got Cy Young votes last year. We got ourselves a real ace. He doesn't even make that much money, and he changes everything about this rotation. And by the way, all those things I just said about Freddy Peralta are absolutely true. He changes this rotation. But I can't help but not love what they gave up. I'm being honest with you. And maybe that's my own flaw. Maybe this is the prospect hugger I don't want to be. Maybe I'm biased towards the fact that we've heard so much about Jett Williams since they drafted him. Yes, one of my son's name is Jett. So he was excited about Jett Williams coming up. But I was excited about him. Brandon Sproat, it's a little bit different. The Mets have a lot of pitching prospects. And in a weird way, giving up Brandon Sproat doesn't kill me. Knowing Jonah Tong is still here, knowing Christian Scott's on his way up, knowing Nolan McLean is still here. I think it was the Jett Williams thing that bothers me. And maybe the issue I run into, and I got to get over it, is that when you hear about somebody for so long, and you hear about the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations, whether it's injuries or what have you, and now he's close, like he's about to be here. This is the year he's going to come up and he's going to have some kind of role on this team, probably in the outfield. And to have it just, all right, he's gone now. For a player, and this is really the part that concerns me, it's not maybe as much giving up Sproat and Jett Williams. They're doing it for a guy who, until proven otherwise, is a rental. Until David Stearns proves to me, you, and everybody listening that he is actually willing to go out of his comfort zone when it comes to contracts, this is a rental. And what scares me about a rental is I'm not sure this team is good enough to go win a world championship. And I hate to say it, but we define rentals based on, all right, maybe for us it's not winning a world championships. Maybe it's just getting to a World Series. because we all love the Yoenis rental and they didn't win the World Series. I kind of get a sense, and I'll have YouTube chat, and I'll certainly go into the Rico mailbag over the next few days. I'm going to predict that I'm in the minority here. I'm going to predict that most Met fans are like, this is great. Yeah, David Stearns is my guy. I knew it. He's a genius. Killing the deal. Because at the end of the day, I'm excited that the Mets got better, right? I will eventually be excited that the Mets got better. But my initial reaction is I think they gave up a lot. They gave up 2 top 100 prospects. They gave up more than the Orioles gave up for Corbin Burns. Am I wrong about that? And until this team president proves he's willing to get out of his comfort zone when it comes to contracts, I have to assume that they gave up 2 top 100 prospects for a rental and a really good controllable arm in Tobias Myers, who I'm actually excited about, and I'll get to him in a little bit. Tobias Myers probably got me to not be as upset, or it's not even upset, that's probably not the right word, as nervous about this trade as I would have been. And I guess I'm conflicted. This is the fun thing about doing instant reactions, because by the time I get on the radio at 10 a.m., 12 hours after a trade is done, I can start to become more rational. In the moment, I'm anxious about what they gave up. I'm anxious about the fact that Peralta's a rental to proven otherwise. And I can't just put myself into the joy of, well, the Mets got better. And they obviously did. They traded 2 guys who probably weren't going to be on the major league roster on opening day, though they both had a shot to be. 2 guys that are unproven. One guy's never been in the major leagues. The other guy was here very briefly. For 2 guys who can legitimately help the Mets in 2026. So there's no question that from a short-term perspective, the Mets got better. I can't deny that. But they gave up a lot. And more than giving up a lot, and I have said this before, this is not something new that I'm just whipping out right now after this trade. The track record of David Stearns is that he's not paying Freddy Peralta. That is not an opinion. That's a fact. He's not paying him based on his actions over the last. So what I would ask everybody listening right now, even if they hate my opinion on this and they wanted a pom-pom rally, something like that. My question to you is this. If I'm telling you he's leaving at the end of the year, like they are not serious about re-signing him. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just hypothetically, if I'm telling you he's gone at the end of the year, are you good with the trade? Are you happy with the trade? Are you content with the trade? What's your opinion on the trade if David Stearns is privately saying, I'm not going to try to resign? He's going to be 30 years old in June. He's going to want a long-term deal. Not doing it. How would you feel about it? Now, there is a group of people that will say, hey, let's go win a championship. Why the hell not? And as we saw, and the Mets have done this before, like we are familiar with rentals. Mike Hampton was a rental, but the difference with Mike Hampton, they got to the World Series, and he was a big part of it. And like I said at the top, look, if you get to the World Series, right, I guess it's worth it. It should be championship, but I guess for us, it's get to the World Series and it's worth it. The Mets tried to keep Mike Hampton. They tried. And that was in the Wilpon era. So maybe it was you will, like they tried, but did they really try? I just want to know, are they going to try to keep this guy? And the other thing I want to know, and this would change my opinion on this very quickly, will they try to extend him right now? Because maybe Freddy Peralta, maybe, I'm not betting on it, but maybe Freddy Peralta and his agent say, you know what? We're coming off the best year of our career, my career, his career, however you want to define it. There may be a lockout next year. We have no idea what it's going to look like. And as good as Freddie is, Tarek Skubal's the eye of the apples of everybody. So why compete with Tarek Skubal? We have the eyes of the Mets on us. They just traded for us. Let's make a deal with the Mets. Maybe Freddy Peralta agents are open to that. And if the Mets pulled that off tomorrow and said, all right, here's a 6-year deal, $30 million a year. So what's the math on that? $180 million? Let's just get this crap done. I'd do a 180 on this. I'd say, great. Okay. Okay, let's go. I'd feel different about giving up the kinds of prospects they gave up. But they're not a championship team. I shouldn't say that. They don't feel like a championship team. Could they compete for one? It's baseball. Make the playoffs. You can compete for one. And in this day and age, making the playoffs shouldn't be that difficult, even though this team showed you last year it was. So I shouldn't say they're not capable of competing for a championship, but do I think they're better? No one's better than the Dodgers. Put them aside. Are they as good as the Philadelphia Phillies? I think they cut the gap, but pound for pound, do I think the Phillies are probably still better? Sure. But like when the Yankees traded for Juan Soto, when you make a rental play, you're going for the gusto. You're trying to win this bad boy. And I'm not super confident in that. So it's a very mixed reaction. Now, Hoff, you've been critical of this offseason. I've probably been more positive than you, and I exactly haven't been that positive. You wanted pitching. They've clearly addressed the pitching, something we've screamed about all year. Do you, Pete Hoffman, also known as the unnamed producer on the Carton Show, are you more positive about this trade than I am? Are you feeling better about this trade than I am? Pete disappeared. All right. So it'll be like his work in the afternoons. He doesn't get to talk. I mean, the vibe I'm getting from my fellow Met fans is raw excitement about this. And I think I'll get there because the truth is, and watch, I could probably get there by the end of the episode because all I have to do is now think about this rotation. All I have to do is say, wow, you're taking everybody in this rotation and you're moving it back a slot. You're telling Nolan McLean, hey, kid, we're not relying on you to be the ace and the opening day starting pitcher. Just continue to grow. You're telling, I don't know who you want to use after that, David Peterson. You were great last year. You collapsed in the final month. We're moving you a slot. We're telling Sean Manaea, hey, you were a waste last year. We're not super relying on you this year. You're telling Kodai Senga, who I'm not sure is going to be on this team, but at least for the sake of this podcast, hey, Kodai, we're not overly relying on you. Clay Holmes, back of the rotation now, or middle to back of the rotation now. It does make everyone move back a slot. And you do feel much better about that. And then you include Tobias Myers. And I think the reason I am now convinced Kodai Senga is gone is probably the addition of Tobias Myers. Because here's a guy who, yes, he could pitch out of the bullpen, but 2 years ago when we faced them in the postseason in 2024, he made 25 starts and was really good. I got to do a little bit more research on what happened to him last year because I'm not that familiar with it. I'll do it while you talk, Off. But what you tell me, because I don't want to be overly negative. I'm just giving you my raw emotions, which is nervousness about Peralta seriously being taken care of long-term and what they gave up in prospect capital in Brandon Sproat and Jett Williams. How you feel about this?
So it's weird. This is probably the most, besides the Bichette move, I think this is the most happiest I've been because they addressed the pitching. Evan, there's the biggest issue last year with the Mets was they didn't have a reliable starter. I mean, whether or not Freddy Peralta is considered an ace, he's up there. He's one of the best. He's been one of the best pitchers in the league. So you have to look at him now. His numbers outside of Milwaukee, outside of the Dome, were not the greatest. But I have to believe that David Stearns has done his homework and thinks that this is that's going to lead the Mets to, a competent record this year, like, definitely over 500 and someone who's going to be able to pitch well at Citi Field. So I'm very happy about this trade. Now, listen, you talk about Jett Williams and Brandon Sproat. Yeah, it sucks, but I don't know who they are. I don't know who those guys are. If you lose Peralta after this year and Williams and Sproat have an unbelievable career, that's going to burn. But again, was Jett Williams really going to have an impact this year? Was Brandon Sproat might have, because this pitching staff is terrible or was terrible. I don't know so much about Jett Williams. So I really wasn't concerned about that. I know it sucks, but do me a favor. Like you said, why don't you sign the freaking guy? Like Freddy Peralta, who's his agent? Is it Boris?
No.
Oh, good. So you don't have to play these games that we're gotta go to free agency. Sign them. That's all you gotta do. Sign them. You'll make me feel better.
And I admit that. I think if you sign him, I would look at it as, all right, yes, you gave up 2 prospects who could turn into something and not turn into something, but hey, I've got close to an ace for the next half a decade. And I would feel a lot better about that. But until proven otherwise, I don't believe David Stearns is going to give him a long-term contract offer. Because if he did, it would be the first reported long-term contract offer to anybody not named Juan Soto or Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And considering he's going to be 30 in the middle of June, the track record tells you there isn't going to be a long-term offer unless David Stearns views Freddy Peralta differently. And that's the thing I hold out hope for because of his familiarity with him in Milwaukee, that maybe he just views him as somebody who he thinks will age better than others. But you can't deny the track record is that he's not going to get a long-term offer. And I remember saying this about a year ago about Brandon Sproat, where I said, I wouldn't trade him for just about anything. Not because I know he's going to be a star, but because if the Mets are going to have a strategy, if the strategy that David Stearns is going to deploy for his time here is, I am not locking in guys over 30 to long-term deals. And I used to say it was only pitching, but now I think it may be everything. Because even when you look at position players and the way this offseason was handled, where did they make long-term offers? And I'm not even complaining about it because they got what they wanted, right? They've added good ball players on short-term high AAV deals where they have that flexibility. So he got what he wanted. He played with fire because he could have ended up with nobody. But obviously, Bo Bichette signs the short-term high AAV deal. They get Polanco on a 2-year deal. They cut a few years off the Nimmo contract by bringing in Marcus Semien. They bring in Luis Robert Jr., who's on a short-term deal. So it is become short-term with just about everybody. But if you're going to have a strategy where you're not going to give starting pitchers long-term deals, can you really afford to trade top 100 prospects who are starting pitchers? Because that's how you're going to have starters for a while. It's going to be the guys you develop because God knows you're not going to sign guys. So unless this is the exception, and maybe it is because of the history he has with him in Milwaukee, maybe it is, and we don't see it coming. If it's not the exception, then it's a very expensive price for 1 year of Freddy Peralta.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't want to do this right now, but I do feel like the fact that they haven't gone for a long-term deal, the more and more I think about it is because of 2027. It is because the CBA is going to be up and they're going to have to renegotiate. They don't want to be into long-term deals. I really truly believe that now because this is his guy. Freddy Peralta's his guy. If he doesn't sign him to a long-term contract, then he's never going to sign anybody to a long-term contract.
No, unless the guy is uniquely young, the way Yamamoto was, and obviously the way Soto was for position players. I don't know if it's the lockout. I understand why one would think that. It may be a strategy. It just may be this is how we want to play this. We don't think it's worth giving. And there's a part of me that understands it because most free agents don't actually work out. And when you sign guys who are in their 30s, you're usually paying for what they did, not paying for what they're going to do. So I get it, but you also sometimes need to take chances. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I would have signed Corbin Burns. Obviously, that wouldn't have worked out, as we saw early on in Arizona.
All right, so here's the other thing, too, is, this is turning into a David Stearns team. This is it. We have seen the transition. But, if this doesn't work out and then all the 1-year deals come off the books, is it going to be every year here's a new crop of guys we get, and here's another then 2028, here's 10 more new people that we got?
Possibly.
Is that what it's going to be?
No, my thinking is it's until the young players are developed. You do this. If you go back a few years ago, I remember Steve Cohen almost explaining it, that the reason they bridged Scherzer and Verlander on these short-term deals was, I'm doing it to be competitive until the young guys that we're developing are ready. And so That's what I surmise with a lot of these position players. Like if Brett Beatty again has another year where he proves, hey, he's actually real good, it makes it easier to say, let's move him back to third base. We're good. We don't have to give Bo Bichette $45 million. Carson Bench comes up and wins Rookie of the Year and has a great year. It makes him say, oh, okay, we don't have to pay blah, 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 a few $1,000,000. So I look at it more of as a bridge until the young players prove themselves. By the way, the Tobias Myers thing is very interesting, and I'm glad he was in the deal. I don't want to make him out to be worth Brandon Sproat and Jett Williams because he's not. But it is nice that there's a piece coming back who very well could at least contribute to this team in the years moving forward. They have a lot of team control on him. The quick research on Tobias Myers was that, because I remember in 2024, he was really good. He made 25 starts, and he pitched to a pretty high level, and he sort of came out of nowhere because he's bounced around the league as a minor leaguer. Last year, he began the year in the minor leagues, and my assumption would be, and we're going to see this again this year with the Mets, where sometimes you have a guy, especially a pitcher, start the year in the minor leagues when they have options because you don't need that fifth starter or that sixth starter, and then you bring the guy up. So he actually started the year in the minor leagues and made 3 starts. Then he came up to the majors and just didn't pitch. He didn't pitch great, but it was also a lot of short starts, like 4 innings, 2 runs in a game against the Giants, 2 innings, 2 runs in a game against Chicago, which was odd. He threw a lot of pitches in 2 innings. Maybe that was the reason. Then he came out of the bullpen in a game, pitched a scoreless inning. Then he had a really good outing where he pitched into the 6th inning against the Astros. Then another short 4-inning start. Then another short 3 2/3 inning start. Then he goes back down to the minor leagues where he's okay, basically 5 to 6 innings, 3 runs each start. Then he comes back in July and pitches out of the bullpen. Then he goes back to the minor leagues where he makes 1 appearance. And then he comes back and essentially in August and September, and then eventually in the postseason, pitches out of the bullpen. And he's one of those guys that can pitch multiple innings. So my gut with Tobias Myers is not that he's going to be in the rotation, obviously, but that he's another depth arm and maybe a guy who pitches out of the bullpen. Maybe he's that long reliever that we've talked about. But I think the beauty of a guy like Tobias Myers is that it's just at least another arm that you throw out there, and he gives you more depth. And if you're trading 2 top prospects for a guy who very well could be gone at the end of the season, it's nice to have some more, just in case he is gone. When you look at the current state of the rotation, though, and we went through it real quick, how everyone gets moved back a slot, Freddy Peralta is your ace. And I think I described him a few weeks ago on a Rico as, I don't know if he's an ace, but he's very close to being one. Like if you don't want to call him an ace, he's on the verge because he's given you the 3 straight years of making every start, which to me, there's a few things that make you an ace. It's the reliability, and then it's pitching to a very high level. And when you look at what he's done over the last couple of years, real quick, he made the 33 starts last year, which is great. That's a full season, 176 innings, which this day and age is a full season. 176 is the new 200. The year before that, 32 starts, 173 innings. Again, another full season. And the year before that, 30 starts, 165 innings. Before that, he had missed time. And then you go before that, he wasn't a starter yet. He was a reliever who was trying to prove himself at the major league level. So you're talking about 3 consecutive full seasons. Now, his numbers in 23, a 3.86 ERA. Not ace-like, but okay. 2024, a 3.6 ERA, not ace-like, but again, pretty good. And then last year, a career low 2.70 ERA. Now, some of the metrics will tell you he pitched to some pretty good luck last year. His FIP has been similar, which is in the high 3s and the low 4s, including last year. But he pitched to that 2.70 ERA. He strikes out 10 guys per 9, walks about 3 guys per 9. So he's on the verge of being an ace. And you could certainly argue, despite turning 30 coming up in June, that his trajectory is moving up. That despite the age, being as old as he is, He hasn't thrown that many innings in the major leagues because, like I mentioned, when you go back to his rookie seasons in 2018 and his second year in 2019, he didn't pitch a lot. He made a handful of starts. He pitched out of the bullpen. So there's not a lot of mileage on him, which could give you the positivity that we still haven't even seen the best of him, especially going into a contract year, that Freddy Peralta could be one of those guys that competes for a National League Cy Young. I know it's tough to do that when you got a guy like Paul Skeens, but he is trending upwards. At least that's the hope. So what I said about him a few weeks ago is that if you don't want to call him an ace, he's damn close to one. He's very, very close to one. And he certainly has given you that reliability the last 3 years, which I've talked endlessly about, that this team needs reliability in the rotation, especially when you look at what happened last year. Like their biggest issue wasn't necessarily they didn't have an ace. It was, can anybody go out and give you 6 innings when over and over again you're going to your bullpen in the 3rd inning? And Freddy Peralta gives you that. And I'll give you an example. You just go to his game logs from last year and think about how many starts in a row the Mets weren't getting innings out of their starting pitchers. I'm going to go through real quick on this. And keep this in mind, especially for anyone who's a little bit older. It's 2025, or now it's 2026, but I'm talking about 2025. This is not Tom Seaver. This is not David Cohn, if you want to go into the late 80s. This is not even Jacob deGrom. You know, it was funny when I worked with Craig. He used to bust my balls by calling him the 6th-inning man, as if it was an insult. And I understand why it would be. Now when a guy goes 6 innings, it's almost like he went deep into a game. So as I give you the innings that Freddie threw in each individual start last year, just keep in mind, it is a different world. 5 innings, 8 innings, 5 innings, 5 1/3, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5 1/3, 5, 4 1/3. There's your 1. 5 innings, 6 innings, 6 innings, 6 innings, 5, 5, 6, 6, 6 2/3, 5, 5, 4, 5, 6, 6, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, 5. And then his last start, we can't count because they took him out early, as you may recall, 2 innings. So it's not 7 1/3, unfortunately. There aren't a lot of guys that do it, but there is a lot of consistency of giving you 5 or 6 innings, which in this day and age, I hate to say it, is going deep into a game. You think back to last year, and I've got it written down if you really want to get a stomach ache, of 3 1/3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 3, like way too many short starts. And while Peralta isn't giving you 7, 7, 7, 7, or 6, 7, he is giving you a lot of 6-inning starts. There's a bunch of 5s in there. Bunch of 5s. I'm looking at his pitch counts to see how deep did he go into games. He threw over 100 pitches in a game 8 different times. His season high was 113 in September. And what I love about that, whenever I do this, whenever I look at when did you throw the most pitches, it's always in a 5-inning start. It's never in an 8-inning start because they push you, which I think is the biggest hypocrisy. These managers will push you to throw that great number in a start that's not as effective. It's because you're so desperate to not go to your bullpen early that you ask Freddy Peralta to throw 113 pitches in a game in which he goes 5 innings. But I think you can see by those game logs in that he's not a no-brainer ace, because I think the no-brainer ace is going 7, 7, 7, you know, like that. But in this day and age, when you're going 5, 6 innings every start, there's a value to that. And obviously, he ends up pitching to an ERA that was under 3. And again, you go back to the hope and the idea that you aren't trading for the best of what someone did, but what they can give you. That coming off of the year he's coming off of, being in the prime of his career, assuming there's no extension, going into a contract year, that Freddy Peralta can give you a big, big season. That's the hope. That's the belief. But it cost a lot. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They gave up a lot. And I'm annoyed at some of you Because I remember at the very beginning of this offseason, way beginning, I put together a fake trade for Tarek Skubal. And I was, it's too much, Evan. You give it up way too much. And the truth is, it was more than what they just gave up for Peralta, but not that much more. And Freddie's good, and Freddie's solid, and he's a good addition. He ain't Tarek Skubal. And I was lectured by a lot of you. Oh, that's not what you give up for a rental. You give up far less. Look at the Corbin Burns trade. Look at this trade. And look what they just gave up. And maybe there's a tax in being in the same league. I brought that up early in this offseason that the Brewers probably would prefer not to keep him in the National League. They probably prefer to send him to an American League team. And maybe the Mets had to really clear the hurdle of prospects they gave up compared to what maybe the Yankees were going to have to give up, or another team that was competing in the American League. Let me read some of your emails because I do want to hear what the people think. The ricob@gmail.com. I'll ask Koff to read some of your YouTube comments, I guess, too. Keep the live YouTube audience intact as well. But let's start off with Michael, who writes, the rotation of the Mets is good. This is a solid rotation. Peralta, McLean, Peterson, Senga, Holmes, Minaya, Tong, Scott, if needed, deserved. I'm pumped. I can't lie. Jason writes, hey, Evan, first-time emailer. I've heard that even though the Mets have landed Peralta, they could still be in the market for Tarek Skubal. Not only that, but I think trading for him and another bat makes a lot of sense. Now that Beatty is seemingly available for trade, what if we try to trade Brett Beatty, David Peterson, and 2 top 10 prospects for Tarek Skubal and Spencer Torkelson? There were rumors surrounding the Mets pivoting to trading for Torkelson if they didn't re-sign Pete last year. I really think this move makes sense for the Mets. What do you think? Can they get the deal done without giving up McLean, Tong, or Benj? I don't think they're trading Skubal. I've gone back and forth on it, but unless they're doing such a good job of keeping the smoke away, there doesn't seem to be any thought to Skubal being traded. And I do think that as deep as the Met farm system is, this would absolutely have to make it difficult to then pull off a Skubal trade, because you would think Brandon Sproat would be in that deal. You would think Jett Williams would be in this deal. And the other thing you have to ask yourself, especially with the package that Jason put together, which included Carson Bench, can you really afford to give up a ton more prospects for another rental? So you may give up your entire farm system. Yes, you'd build up a super rotation in 2026, but both of those guys are going to be free agents at the end of the year. So I think Skubal is unrealistic for now. I think it is worth reevaluating at the trade deadline if the Tigers decide to move him, and certainly where the Mets are. Now, there's a lot of things that can change between now and then. Joshua writes, consider that Peralta may be pitching in a 6-man rotation due to Holmes and Senga. His season-long numbers may not be the same. He may be better off signing an extension now. This is likely wishful thinking on my part because obviously we want the Mets to extend him, but he would get an extension near what he would get in free agency for potentially less of an overall workload. This would save innings on his arm as a pitcher in the long run. I don't think Kodai Senga is going to be on this team. That's a prediction I've had for a long time. I know there has been quietness lately in terms of are they going to trade him, but I think that they probably held off on dealing him because they weren't sure they were going to add a starter. David Stearns didn't say much at the Bo Bichette press conference on Wednesday, but one of the things he said was, we're trying to add a starter. We may not, but we're trying. And I kind of believe that because I think that David Stearns was never going to extend for Framber Valdez. And if the market didn't help him with free agency, he wasn't just going to sign anybody. Same thing with the trade market. And so my gut is we're going to be doing another Rico shortly talking about the Senga dump. The Senga dump. I don't know what they're getting back in the Senga dump. And I'm not even necessarily telling you I'd be in favor of the Senga dump. I don't like trading people when their value is low. And I don't like the idea of just trading him to save a few dollars. I know that Cohen has spent a lot of money. I appreciate that. But it's still not something I love. I don't love, a guy who's shown the potential that Senga has shown and just getting rid of him. So I'm not endorsing dumping him, but I think they will. The other thing is, let me pull up the numbers just to confirm it's true. I think Freddy Peralta has actually been better on regular rest than he's actually been with extra rest. We talked last year about the benefit of extra rest if they were using a six-man rotation and how so many of their guys actually really benefited from it. But I think I was looking at Freddie's number at some point during this long-ass offseason, and I think the numbers show you he's actually better on regular rest. And yes, I'm confirming that is all fact. Here are the numbers. 46 career starts on regular rest. Regular rest is 4 days rest. The ERA is 3.26. With 5 days rest, 3.60. And with 6 or more days, 3.97. How about that? Oh, look at this. Hoff is hooked up comments on YouTube that I can read. So for our podcast audience, here's some live reaction. New York Giants fan forever. Ugh, Giants. I'm kidding. I'm just jealous of you. This was a great trade for the Mets. We're a win-now mode. I love it. Sproat is a good arm, but we have depth at the position. Jett didn't have a place on this team, we assume. Bio and Peralta won't be back, but why not? I don't know if Jett didn't have a place on this team. I know that the infield feels filled right now, but number one, a lot of these guys are old. They can get hurt, so you can always find a role based on injuries. And number two, the outfield. I like the trade for Luis Robert Jr. If you missed it, we did episode 624 earlier on Wednesday, and you could go back. We talked all about Luis Robert Jr. I like it. It's a low-risk trade, but what I also said a few times on that pod, and I've said it before when talking about Robert Jr., is I don't care that he makes $20 million. He is not guaranteed center field for the entire season. He's not. Is he the center fielder on opening day? Yes. But if on June 1st he's hitting 175, I'm sorry. And so that's another place where an opportunity could have come Jett Williams' way. Same thing in left field. I mean, left field right now could be Brett Beatty. It could be Carson Bench if he earns it. It could be Jett Williams. I believe that a young player will always force their way in if they perform. So I get the idea that there feels like less of a need for him because of the veterans they brought in. But remember this about the veterans. Jorge Polanco is on a 2-year deal, and he's probably mostly playing first base. Marcus Semien, even though he signed long-term, is in his mid-30s, late 30s pretty much. And Bo Bichette signed a 1-year deal. Quickly on Bo Bichette, and I think Bo's in a tough spot when he does these press conferences. He does his press conference. I listen to the whole thing. I came here to win. Okay. You came here to win. So the place you went that gives you the best chance to win is the team that had an epic collapse and basically got rid of its core. I mean, I love Juan Soto too, but did you really look at the Phillies and the Mets and even Toronto, who just were in the World Series in the 7th game? Did you really, really say to yourself, they give me the best chance to win? I hope it turns out to be prophetic, Bo, but I mean, that felt like lip candy. No, lip service. There you go. The other thing is John Heyman being, John Heyman said, hey, Bo, based on the 3-year contract with the opt-outs, is it essentially a 1-year deal? And it's a great question by John. What's Bo Bichette going to say? Of course it's a 1-year deal. So his agent took the answer and didn't even let Bo answer it. Of course it's a 1-year deal. And I know when you do a press conference, you want to make everybody feel good. Sometimes you could just be honest, which is, hey, excited to play in New York. The fans are awesome. You could do that same stuff. I think we have a chance to win, but I thought this was a good business decision for me. I'm 28 years old. I'm going to have a monster year. I can re-enter free agency. I'd love for this to be a permanent home. Like, you could play that game, but come on. It's essentially a 1-year contract. Anyhow, back to the 6-man rotation thing. That's important, I think, that Freddy Peralta has been better on regular rest than he does with extra days. Last year, and in fact, let me give you the last 2 years. Last year, 12 of his starts, so more than a third, less than half, 12 starts on regular rest, 2.59 ERA. The year before that, 13 starts on regular rest, 2.89 ERA. So over the last 2 years, he's just been better on regular rest. And in a contract year, especially if they're not going to keep him, especially if they're not serious about keeping him, you maximize the amount of times he starts. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I don't care about his arm, but if you're not going to give this guy a 7-year contract and you're not thinking about protecting him for the next bunch of years, then maximize every start he makes. You gave up 2 big-time prospects for this guy. You know what I'm saying? You gave up 2 big-time prospects for this guy. I don't want to hear it. You pitch him every 5 days. But right now, let's think about this rotation and kind of analyze it. So you've got Freddy Peralta. I guess he's your opening day starter, assuming everybody's healthy. You've got Nolan McLean. I'm doing the locks. Let's just start off with the absolute mortal locks, barring injury, of course. Freddy Peralta is a lock. Nolan McLean, I think, is a lock. Clay Holmes is a lock. I think he earned that last season. I know we still have this intrigue of moving him to the bullpen, and it could still happen because of the experience that he has. But I think to start the season, Clay Holmes is a lock for the rotation. That's 3. I think, again, barring trade, David Peterson is a lock for the rotation. I take a lot of crap for saying this, but David Peterson had a good year last year. He fell off ridiculously at the end, but I cannot penalize or ignore April, May, June, July, and most of August because of how god-awful he was in September. I don't think that's who he is. So I think David Peterson goes into the year as a lock. So now I'm at 4. Am I at 4? I think so. Then you've got Sean Manaea. You've got Kodai Senga. And I'll stop there because I think that Jonah Tong is clearly going to the minor leagues. Barring injuries and a great spring, I don't see Tong breaking camp. I think the same goes with Christian Scott. I think both of those guys are factors. They could be huge factors in 2026, but I would assume they go in to the start of this season in AAA. So that leaves you, doing the math here, with Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea as your 5th starter, which, by the way, when you say that off the top, that feels pretty good. That's why I think Senga's out. Now, our last emailer brought up 6-man rotation. If it's a 6-man rotation, then sure, fits out perfectly. And I guess you could get creative and get Senga every 6 days while pushing Peralta every 5th day. You could do that while resting Clay Holmes, while even resting Nolan McLean, as much as we want to see him pitch all the time. I mean, it's certainly possible in his first full season in the major leagues, the Mets want to be careful with his innings. So I think there is a way, if they don't trade Senga, which I expect them to do, but if they don't trade Kodai Senga, there is a way to manipulate the rotation where Peralta's going every 5 days. You keep him online, and everyone else sort of gets manipulated around him. But I do think, especially earlier today with the signing of Luis Garcia, the veteran reliever who's bounced around and has pitched everywhere and had a relatively effective year last year, I think they're done. I think that they're mostly done. I don't want to say completely done because I do think there is a Senga dump on the way, but I think they're done. I think this is the team. And now the assignment I would give everybody, I'm going to give it to myself as well, is let us all let this marinate. Because it's been a crazy last couple of days and really last week when you look at missing on Tucker, pivoting to Bichette, trading for Robert Jr., and obviously this monster trade for Freddy Peralta. There's a lot going on. I use this analogy on Evan and Tiki that after they lost Diaz and Alonso, and I probably used it here as well, that David Stearns is making a painting. And when they lost Diaz and they lost Alonso and they traded Nimmo for Simeon, even when they just traded Nimmo for Simeon, I don't know what the final painting's going to look like. So while I'm upset in the moment, I'm open-minded enough to know, Let me see how everything plays out. I think we're at the point right now here in late January, a few weeks away from spring training, where 95% of things have played out. I don't see there being many more significant things. They've added the big arm in the rotation. The bullpen is completely different. The lineup is completely different. Like, the Mets are significantly different from a year ago. Significantly. I know the rotation is going to feature a lot of similar names, but everyone gets pushed back a little bit when you acquire a guy like Freddy Peralta. So what do we think of this? Like, the painting has now been drawn, right? We saw what they did, and it is major differences. I mean, huge differences. When people ask me specifically about the lineup, and I've said this here, I've said it on the air, what do you think? And we've analyzed it. You go back into the archives, episode 623, 622, and we did it all the time, comparing the new lineup to the old lineup. They're just different. Like, the Mets of 2026 are completely different. Do I feel better about the Mets in 2026 going into spring training as I did 2025? The answer is probably not. But a lot of that comes from what happened the previous year. A lot of that comes from we were in the NLCS and we added Juan Soto. Simple stuff. Makes you feel good. This year, they're coming off an epically bad end of the season, and not just end of the season, the last few months. And then they took the core, a lot of guys we like, or some of us like, and completely changed it. So it's tough to feel as good as you felt last year. But here's where I do think things are different. Even for those, myself included, that were so devastated by the players that we lost. It doesn't feel as hopeless as it felt a month ago. Let me read a few more of your emails. Sam writes, thankfully, you went to the Knicks game tonight. Otherwise, you probably would have gone to sleep early again and missed the live trade. We want instant reaction Ricos to hear your live reaction, not the next morning like the Robert Jr. trade or the Tucker signing with the Dodgers move. Sam. I live in a new world. I wake up massively early for the new hours that we do. And lately, I've been going to sleep early. And even when there's sporting events, I tend to wake up and watch them very early in the morning. But I have good news for you, Sam, and for the others. Yes, I was able to watch the massacre at Madison Square Garden, which kept me up. And B, once the season starts, I promise you, I cannot go to sleep during Met games. And normally I wouldn't be able to go to sleep during Nets games, but they're so bad this year and unwatchable that I do tend to fall asleep and then watch it in the morning. So it's been different in that regard. So I ain't going to sleep early forever, but yes, I admit it's been tough. Now, Hoff, I want you to turn your camera on because you do have to take, not an L. I'm not giving you an L for this, but you do have to be honest. Can you tell the audience about my text message to you about the Luis Robert Jr. trade at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, and I don't understand why we didn't blow this up earlier, because this was more on me than anybody else. I fell asleep, I think, by 10 or 10:30 because my wife said she came down to ask me if I wanted to watch a TV show with her, and I was passed out on the couch. And then I woke up the next morning to a text from Evan around whatever time it was, 1 o'clock-ish, being like, you want a Rico? And that's all on me. And I got to be honest with you, I've been taking advantage of the fact that there's been no late games and nothing, trying to get to sleep early. So that one's on me. I'll take the L.
That I would look. I fell asleep, but I woke up in the middle of the night to a million text messages, and I got to look at my phone to see the exact time, but I think it was 1 a.m. I think that's what it was.
It was definitely after midnight. That I know for sure. It's definitely after midnight.
Yeah. So I apologize. And really, it's not only my fault. I mean, it's Hoff's fault, but it's also, why do they have to make moves at midnight? Why does that have to happen at 11 o'clock at night? Though
even today was 10 o'clock, 10:30 or whatever it was. It was 10:30. They finally made the move. I'm like, what are we doing? Why is it so long? What? We had all day.
Yeah. I know. Why can't it break during one of our shows?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, and I should address this on this episode 625. So on episode 624, we broke down the Luis Robert Jr. trade. And as our last emailer wrote, I recorded that, or we did it live. We do all our Ricos live on YouTube, and then they're very quickly uploaded to wherever you download your podcast. And I always like to say when we're doing it live. That was in the morning, right? He's right about that. It was the next morning we talked about it. That was actually Wednesday morning. And in the midst of it, we talked about Cody Bellinger. And I said, I think in episode 624, there's a chance as you're listening to this, Cody Bellinger will have already signed with the New York Yankees, because the indications certainly were that with the Mets making the trade for Robert Jr., not that they were out on Cody, that they probably had an offer out there, and they kind of knew he wasn't going to take it. And that's exactly what happened. So I don't think it's a surprise. It was a long, winding road for Bellinger to re-sign with the New York Yankees on that 5-year contract. Look, we've gone over this a million times. We've just done it with Freddy Peralta. There has not been a willingness to go long-term. And Hoff has brought up, emailers have brought up, it's the luxury, not the luxury tax, it's the lockout, it's the new CBA, it's the unknown of that. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a strategy that David Stearns has. All I know is that they were never going to 5 years for Cody Bellinger. They didn't even make an offer to Pete Alonso when he ended up going 5 years. They just don't make those offers. Bo Bichette they got because he was willing to take a 3-year deal. So until proven otherwise from someone not named Juan Soto or Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it's just not what they do. And it doesn't mean we aren't going to scream about it. Doesn't mean we're not going to disagree with it, especially for certain players. But that's who they are. And for now, that's my trepidation on the Freddy Peralta trade in conclusion. The Mets have gotten better. Their rotation is significantly better. Steve Cohen went on social media and said, what an incredible week. Let's go Mets. And so he is spiking the football. He thinks, hey, we've done a great job. I think a lot of Met fans feel they've done a great job. And they have in terms of improving the roster. No doubt from where they were 2 weeks ago. I mean, you'd be a fool not to admit that. They added Bo Bichette, Luis Robert Jr., and they just added Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers. And the two guys they gave up, while big prospects, were probably not going to be the team on opening day. One of them's never been in the majors. The other one may have been here at some point this season. So I get that they've greatly improved. But my overall worry is this a rental? And if this is a rental, I think they gave up a lot. And if this is a rental, you better win. You better win. You better go out and have great success. Now, what does better win mean? Is it just making the playoffs? Is it losing in the DS? Is it losing in the CS? Is it got to be a championship? That's for all of us to kind of determine, because I don't know, man. I look at Cespedes as worth it even before they re-signed him. I looked at Mike Hampton as worth it because they got to the World Series. But when you make an expensive rental, and this was an expensive rental, the bar has been raised.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that right now this team is a World Series team, World Series contender?
It's a loaded question. They're not as good as the Dodgers, but I think my attitude in baseball in 2026 is if you can make the postseason, you have a shot. And I think that if the Mets are a playoff team, whether it's winning the division, which I wouldn't bet my money on, or making it as a wild card team, you got a shot. You're in the mix. I think they're in that same playing field as everyone else, just not named the LA Dodgers. So is that a fair answer to the question?
It's semi-fair. Yeah. I mean, listen, the Dodgers, you're right. They're the cat's pajamas right now. If that, I don't know, if cats meow, maybe that's whatever it is. I don't know. But they're the top of the top of the heap. Everyone's chasing them. And then there's the bottom tier, the next tier. And that's where the Mets are. I don't think they're that high, though. I still don't. I want to win a division. How about that? Let's try to win a division, make it feel good. I don't think they're good enough to win a division at the moment.
Here's all I know about winning a division. I'm 42 years old. I've seen them do it twice. That's it. Twice. 2015, 2006. That's it. That's the list. Anyhow, send in your emails. We'll do a big Rico mailbag analyzing this crazy week, the Freddy Peralta trade, how you feel about it. Did they give up too much? Am I an idiot? Or am I overly emotional? The Luis Robert Jr. trade, not signing Cody Bellinger. It's been a whirlwind week. The one thing you can't say about this offseason is that it hasn't been eventful, because there's been something quite a bit. I have all these, take a deep breath, Rico Brognas, I like to call them, that we have not been able to do because there's always breaking news. So we'll get to those at some point, analyzing losing Met free agents, guys that we loved. We'll get to that, which I have promised. I had a caller call in the other day saying they were very excited for that episode, and where the Edwin Diaz trade now falls, now that the Edwin Diaz trade is over. So we'll get to all of it as we march towards spring training. But send in your emails to ricob@gmail.com. We'll have a big mailbag coming up in a couple of days. Make sure you download the Rico Brogna and you follow the FAN YouTube page, because we do air Evan and Tiki every day. But if you ever want the Rico Brogna immediately, like you don't want to wait for when it is available via podcast on Spotify or Apple or Odyssey or wherever it is, you can always consume it live on the WFAN YouTube page as long as you subscribe, and then you'll be alerted, hey, there's a Rico. The Nets suck. Here's a Rico. Anyhow, thank you very much I said the Nets, not the Mets. They lost by 110 to the Knicks on a Wednesday night. That's the reason I said it. Anyhow, thank you very much for listening, hanging out with us, and subscribing to another edition, a huge edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.